They're done. The 6-game preseasons are over, and the Montreal Canadiens dropped the last preseason game of this season to the Ottawa Senators by a score of 3-1 at the Bell Center tonight. Time for some post-game puck talk. Hey, gang, Costa here for some post-game puck talk here on Puck Talk Montreal. And honestly, I was expecting more from this hockey game. I was expecting a few more fights. I was expecting more of a pushback, but we didn't really get that. All we got was a couple of little incidences where we had some pushing and shoving, and that was about it. And, this is all we got. Arbor Jack guy grabbing two guys and pulling him out of the pile with the linesman in the middle of that, which was really funny. But that's pretty much all we got. Right, we got a little bit of talking. McDermott going over to Arbor Jack guy pretty much telling him, "Didn't they just get you in a trade for the guy that couldn't beat me?" So it was what it was. There was no scraps, no real action of that sort. And to be honest, the Canadiens came out pretty flat. Now, before we get to the highlights, let's mention Insta Customs. They're your number one destination for custom apparel printing. They're the highest rated print shop in Canada with over 3,000 Google reviews, a 4.9 star rating, and they were nominated for a 2024 Canadian Business Choice Award. They print on all your favorite clothing, t-shirts, hoodies, polos, plus hats, beanies, tote bags, even coffee and travel mugs, and yes, they also offer embroidery. Most orders are printed and shipped the very same day, and large orders in less than 3 days with free shipping. Open 7 days a week. They're located in downtown Montreal on Stanley Street. Easy to remember because it ties in with having to win the Stanley Cup, the Canadiens' ultimate goal. So whether it's for yourself, a loved one, or your business, trust InstaCustoms. Visit them in person or order online at instacustoms.com. And honestly, the score says 3-1, but this game was over really early because the Canadiens really didn't have any pushback. Cole Caulfield's goal came late in the third period. It started with a goal by Shane Pinto. And if you watch closely to this replay, Caden Gooley, he misplays this 2-on-1 because he never really decides where he's going to go, whether he's going to cover the pass or cover the man. And he tries to do both, and he ends up with the puck in the back of the net. Watch carefully here. As the Ottawa Senators break out, Sanderson gets the puck from Pinto. He drives wide. Now, Gooley turns around, and it's in the net. Watch this. He turns around, boom. And that's part of the problem when it comes to defending. When it's a 2-on-1, the rule of thumb in defending is that the goaltender takes the shooter and the defender takes the pass. So normally what would happen, as they're coming closer and Sanderson's driving wide, Montembeault would come out to challenge and Gooley would move over to take away Pinto completely and take him out of the play. That's not what happened. He got caught in between, and so Pinto was open in front and was able to deflect the puck behind Sam Montembeault. That's all we got for the first period as far as goals were concerned. And then in the second, again, it was a mistake by Kane Gooley in front of the net that led to the second goal. This time around, if you look very carefully, what happens is he's with David Perron, and then for some reason he decides to go on walkabout. There they bump together, and then he takes off up the slot. Why? And then Perron's left out in front, all alone, to tip the puck past Montembeault. It comes back to trying to do too much as far as being a defenseman. Why are you coming out to cover the guy in the high slot when you know there's somebody at the net front? Hudson had his man. He was right at the side of the goal. He had his guy. Perron came out from behind the net, bumped into Gooley, and Gooley decides, okay, you know what? I'm going to leave the guy in front of the net and just go cover the guy in the high slot who doesn't even look like he's in the play. Again, a bad read by Gooley, something that they're going to work on in the video room, and the Canadiens are going to fix that. Don't worry too much about it. Like I said, it's a preseason game. It's not the end of the world, but it also is not one of Gooley's best. Now, granted, he's coming off a groin injury. Had only, one game, I think, in the preseason, so we're going to cut him some slack, but he's got to be better than that. He's got to be smarter than that, and we know he is. Then late in the third, with about 4:35 left, I think it was, Cole Caulfield at the side of the net gets a rebound after Slavkovsky tries to put it between his legs. It hit Lars Eller's skate and then came to Caulfield, and he put it home. Just jamming it by Ullmark there to make it 2-1. And then, of course, Eller getting the empty netter to make it 3-1, and that's all she wrote as far as the hockey game was concerned. But as I looked through this game, there were a couple things that really stood out to me. Number one, and really importantly, is Sam Montembeault. He had his moments, don't get me wrong, but the good moments were overshadowed by some of the bad. He had the breakaway save that he had, which is this one right here, as I forget who 24 is, but he pulls away, goes to the backhand, the forehand, and Montembeault stops the puck. That wasn't the best save of the night. Joe Veleno had the best save of the night when he made this stop in front of the net. Not just once, but then he pokes the puck away. Watch this. Doink, and then good stick, pokes the puck away. And where's Montembeault? Slid all the way out of the net. And that's been a problem from the very beginning. And, I don't know whether this is a problem with Montembeault's technique or whether it's because he's wearing new gear. I don't know. It's always possible that the gear's too slippery, right? Because you're getting used to it. And that's where you're supposed to get used to it in the preseason, whether it's at practice or whether it's in games. The thing is, though, you don't necessarily see as much lateral movement in practice as you do in games. Or not the same variety of it, where you're trying to get across quick enough to make a stop. And what happens is Montembeault is completely blowing his net out of proportion, sliding way out. And, even on the Pinto goal, he was way overcommitted to the right side because he slid over too far. And he tried to kick his foot out to try to stop the puck afterwards. And, of course, Pinto put it by. But I don't know. There's just I try to get away from picking on Sam Montembeault because I really don't want to. He's made good strides in the last 3 years, right? Coming from being the third string in Florida to where he is now. But there are just things that he does in the game that really irk me. Like sliding by the net, like, just flailing with his feet to kick out the puck, like giving out bad rebounds. These are things that he should have been working on nonstop, and it's just not happening. And again, I'm not going to blame him all the way because he's working with new gear, but you've got to get that gear broken in as quickly and as early as possible because you can't wait for mid-season to finally have the inside of your pads abrasive enough to be able to slow you down enough so you don't slide out of the net, right? Brand new leather, very slick. You slide, yeah, you're going to slide right out of your net. But, it remains to be seen. I'm not going to write the book on Montembeault in the preseason, obviously, right? But, he's got to be better than he was tonight. That goes without saying. And honestly, other than the first line, we didn't see very much, right? I don't know what Marty was thinking putting together the line of Anderson, Evans, and Laine. That's never going to work on any given day. I don't care who you're playing. Because you've got two guys it just doesn't fit in. Not to mention that Laine is a left winger. He doesn't play right wing. So I don't understand why they put him on his off wing, right? I know he's right-handed. So is Anderson. Anderson plays left. Laine plays left. Get where I'm going with this? There's got to be a level of consistency. You got to let your player be in a comfortable position all the time. Yes, they're allowed to skate around and move and go to the opposite side when they find the space and whatnot. But overall, when your guy's a left winger, he stays on that wing for the most part. And so, I don't know anymore, man. The lines are confusing the hell out of me, but we'll go over those a little bit later as we look at what I think the lines are going to look like when the Canadiens break camp and start the regular season on October the 8th. I really, before I go any further, let's mention our other sponsor, and that is cheapesttshirts.ca. Proudly Canadian and trusted by thousands of customers, cheapesttshirts.ca delivers unbeatable price value. You'll always get the lowest price for same-day shipping and even next-day delivery, so your orders arrive fast. With over 1,000 products and more than 36 trusted brands like Gildan Jerseys and American Apparel, the selection is unmatched. Whether you're shopping for everyday clothing, tote bags, aprons, and so much more, you'll find it all in one place. Cheapesttshirts.ca is the go-to source for businesses, events, apparel printing companies, and resellers, or even people just wanting the best deals on everyday clothing. Plus, enjoy free shipping on large orders and a simple, easy-to-use website that makes shopping online a breeze. Get the cheapest deals in Canada today at cheapesttshirts.ca. So here's the thing, right? We've got another 4 days, 3 if you count this day being gone, for the Canadiens to get ready for the Toronto Maple Leafs and the opening of the calendar year. And the issue here is, as I said, defense. You saw what Gouli did. goaltending. Gooley was playing with his regular partner, or at least what I project to be his regular partner, and that is Lane Hudson. They have to be better. It's not necessarily Hudson's fault. Gooley misplayed 2 plays that led to goals. There's no arguing that point. Matheson's going to be back in the lineup. You're going to have a little bit more stability. What happens with Jaden Struble? Well, here's the way I look at it. If you take a look at the lineups as I put them out for the opening day, you've got Caulfield, Suzuki, and Slafkovsky. That one's obvious. Don't look at the numbers lines, right? Because I really don't. 1 through 4 means nothing to me, right? It's just the combinations that we're looking at here. I've got Newhook with Kapanen and Demidov, right? Then after that, I've got Bolduc, Doc, and Laine. And finally, as the 4th line, I have Anderson, Evans, and Gallagher. So that pretty much sums up where I see the forward lines and how structured they are. Gallagher's not going to be the second line winger. I can guarantee you that, because the Canadiens have too much talent on the right side to actually have him there. And yes, I've got Laine and Bolduc inverted. Laine is going to play left. Bolduc's going to play right. On defense, I've got Matheson, Dobson, Gooley, Hudson, Jacky, Carrier, and Struble's going to be number 7. For forwards, I think Joe Veleno and Sammy Blais are going to remain because they are not waiver exempt. So look for Owen Beck and Florian Jacky to go down. And then in goal, Sam Montembeault and Jakub Dobeš, with Capo Kakinen going down to the American Hockey League. And, you can agree with this lineup. I think it's going to be exactly this. I might be wrong. But if you look at the way I've structured it, Kapanen, Newhook, and Demidov look fantastic together. And they were generating offense. So if you put that line together along with the Suzuki line, you've got 2 lines that are offensive generators. Then you've got the Laine, Doc, and Bolduc line, who at that point, they'd be in between, where they wouldn't be dependent on to generate offense. But if they did generate offense, it'd be a plus. Now, granted, we expect Laine to generate it on the power play. That goes without saying. Whether it's first or second unit, that remains to be seen. We still don't know. Personally, I think Laine is going to be on the second power play unit, with the first unit being Slafkovsky, Caulfield, Suzuki, Demidov, and Hudson. So that's one unit. And the second unit, if Laine is there along with Bolduc, at least there's going to be a little bit of chemistry there. So that's why I have those 2 together, even if they're not the de facto second line. You can put Doc on the second unit along with Dobson at the point and Gallagher at the front of the net. So you've got pieces from the first line that are together, and then the second unit is made up of the second and third line split into 2. That allows you, by the way, to be able to bring on your 4th line, which is going to be Anderson, Evans, and Gallagher. You can flip-flop somebody in for Gallagher after he comes off the first unit, but the second unit, excuse me. But, let's say, for example, you put out Newhook along with Evans and Anderson to be a filler. That's not so bad right after power plays are done. So there's options there for Marty St. Louis to have when it comes to, just how he has his power play units, who's going to go on the ice after the power plays are done, et cetera, et cetera. So those are things that Marty himself said he didn't have before. And he was really happy with camp. He mentioned it in his post-game press conference. And I think as a whole, when you look at camp, there are only a couple of real disappointments that I see. One of them, as I've mentioned before, is Joshua Roy. And my understanding is that Joshua Roy's camp is going to want to talk to the Canadiens, possibly looking for a move. And you know what? That's the cheap way out. Roy knows what he needs to do to be better. He's no idiot, right? You can't expect to make it in the National Hockey League, especially not on a team like the Montreal Canadiens, where Marty St. Louis expects his players to work, right? Whether it's, with speed, whether it's physicality, whatever the case is, nobody gets time off on the Montreal Canadiens. You always have to be doing something on the ice. That's what Marty not only asks for, but he demands. And so if Joshua Roy expected to make the Montreal Canadiens out of camp like it did last year by just cruising and letting his line mates do all the work, he's sorely mistaken. And given the amount of work physically that he put into actually getting ready for the season, you would think that he would have been more engaged from that perspective. I'm not talking about throwing body checks, but, just being able to drive plays because he can do that. I have no doubt. I know his skill set. I saw it when he was playing in junior. He's got the ability to drive a line. For some reason, he just doesn't want to do it at the NHL level. And as I mentioned, he reminds me a lot of Jonathan Drouin, where he's got all the tools, but he's got issues between the ears. And don't get me wrong here, I'm not belittling any of the mental issues that Jonathan Drouin had. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking from a hockey perspective. Just his ability to be able to read and react to plays. That's where he's got that same Drouin-esque type thought process. Because the minute Jonathan Drouin got out of the offensive zone, it was as if he didn't know how to play hockey anymore. And that's kind of what happened with Joshua Ottawa. But in his case, it was both ends of the ice. He wanted to do more, but didn't know what to do. So he just cruised as opposed to, drove. And that's what cost him a spot on the Canadiens. If he would have come out gangbusters and not necessarily put up points, but generated offense and generated good scoring opportunities himself, as opposed to waiting for his line mates, Marty would have had a much more difficult decision to make. But since he didn't, now it sounds like his cap is looking for a trade. I don't know what this world's coming to, where you're a guy drafted in the 5th round, and, despite the fact that your last 2 seasons in junior were great, I mean, it is the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. There's no defense in the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League. There I go again, making that mistake. That league has become notorious for an inability to develop defensemen and goaltenders in the last I'd say at least a decade. So if you see a guy coming out of the queue with 110 points, that doesn't necessarily mean very much. And you're going to say, well, Costa, how do you know this? Well, what's the big deal? I want you to go and look up the name Remy Gelina in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. He played for the Noranda Huskies. I can never say that city's name, damn it. Anyhow, he went from playing in the Central Canada Hockey League to the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League, and it's as if he'd never missed a beat. He was the top scorer in the CCHL, and he was one of the best scorers in Noranda. What does that tell you? Junior A hockey in Ontario, Quebec Major Junior Hockey, and the numbers are comparable. What that tells me is the quality of the QMJHL is identical almost to that of the CCHL. And so the player, while he looks great in the queue, it doesn't really say much as far as his stock is concerned, right? Because he's still at that same level. Nothing's changed. The quality of the game in the queue is the same as the quality in the CCHL, right? That's what I'm getting at. It's good hockey, but it's offense first hockey. And so you get high scores, you get bad defense, and, point production is skewed because of it. I've looked at the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League like that for years. Nothing's changed. When you're talking about OHL, WHL, that's a little different. WHL, there's a real push for physicality and defending in that league. The Ontario Hockey League's a hybrid of both. So, what is there to say about Joshua Ottawa? He played with Sherbrooke in the queue. He put up big numbers, and then, he can produce at the American Hockey League level, but in the NHL, it's just not there. So he's going to have a big year in the A, and if he doesn't want to stay in Montreal and he wants to go somewhere else, I mean, good luck to you, man. But you're not doing yourself any favors. A long time ago, there was a coach that told me, you can bitch and complain all you want about what is happening to you, but at the end of it all, when push comes to shove and you take a look in the mirror, it's you that's the person that's going to drive where you play and how you play. Personally, I went from a guy who was pushed aside because I was too small, and I worked my tail off to end up playing junior double letters and, being amongst the top scorers back then. You're talking way early 90s, like 1990, I think was my last junior year. So, from the time I went back to hockey in midget, it took me 3 years to get to the junior level, and I just changed the way I played completely. I played with more of a focus on strategy than I did my skill set because I knew what I could do on the ice. And Rowan knows what he could do on the ice, right? Just as a comparable. But I changed the way I thought because I went from a guy who was offensive minded to a guy that tried to do a little bit more on the defensive side, and it helped me because I was able to get pucks out of my zone, up the ice, and then if I followed up the play as I always did, then there'd be opportunities for me to be able to get the pucks back and create offense. That's what Watt doesn't realize. He doesn't have to be the first guy into the zone with the puck. He could be the last guy in and still have the ability to drive the play. And so I think when he learns to do that by being better in his own zone, by being a catalyst as opposed to reactionary, he's going to have more success. Another disappointment to me is Owen Beck. Sure, he had flashes, but Owen Beck is better than what he shows in the National Hockey League. And I don't know whether or not he's intimidated by the guys that are there or whether it's just the perception. Owen Beck has the ability to be a good player in the National Hockey League, but it's just not clicking for him. I would have thought for sure he would have gotten that spot ahead of Oliver Kapanen this year, but that just didn't happen. And the fact that Kapanen is playing center, that's great for the Montreal Canadiens. It's his natural position. He's comfortable there. He knows what to do. And as opposed to being expected to play on the wing where he was never comfortable, he'll be in a position where he can bring something to the table along with Alex Newhook and Ivan Demidov. So there are a lot of good things that came out of this camp, and Marty is right about that. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with 3 days of the Canadiens practicing and getting ready. Of course, either tomorrow or Monday, the last cuts will be made. And then we'll know exactly what the Canadiens lineup is going to look like. Marty was saying in his post-game press conference, it's easier to have 13 players up front than 14. Why? Because it's easier to tell one guy he's in the press box than two. So maybe the Canadiens are thinking 13 and 8, 2 defensemen. It's always a possibility. Given the fact that Laval is literally next door, it makes things a little bit easier when you need to call up a player based on injury and stuff like that. So maybe as opposed to running with 14 forwards and 7D, they're going to run with 13 forwards and 8D. We're only going to find that out when they make the cuts because tonight, Adam Engstrom was spectacular. When he split the middle of the ice like the Red Sea and came in and got a shot on goal on Ullmark, it was reminiscent of some of the stuff we used to see from Larry Robinson back in the 70s where he would skate the puck all the way down the ice, skate through everybody, and get a shot on goal. I'm not saying he's Larry Robinson. It was reminiscent. It reminded me of him. So if that's the type of game that Engstrom could bring along with his ability to play defense, then the Canadiens will be in an even better spot on the D side. Maybe they want to go 13 and 8 because the groins aren't going as well as one would think on the defensive side of things with with Dobson and with Gooley. I doubt that, but it's always a possibility. We'll see. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be 14, 7, and 2. 23 players total on the active roster for the Canadiens, with Veleno, of course, and Blair being the forwards. And as I said, Struble being the 7th defenseman. So that'll be it for now. We'll see what the Canadiens do. News is probably going to come out on Sunday. And I've got another junior game to do. So we'll talk tomorrow afternoon after those games are done. We'll take a look at the news, and I'll come back with another podcast to make sure that we're up to date on everything. And we'll decide. Maybe I'll put up another poll and ask you guys what you think the Canadiens should do as far as their roster. I'll ask you now. Put it in the comments. Do you think the Canadiens should go with 13, 8, and 2? Or should it be 14, 7, and 2? Do you think Ekstrom's done enough to make the team? Do you think the Canadiens should actually take someone like Sammy Blais and put him on waivers and send him down to the American Hockey League instead of carrying and carry that extra defenseman? The easy play here for the Canadiens would be have the 2 extra forwards in Veleno and Blais, send Engstrom down because he's waiver exempt, and go from there. But we'll see. Surprises have happened before. You never know. Bye for now.